ladies. Hi. I'm really glad we're here tonight. Welcome. Thank you for showing up. I know Sunday nights can be tough sometimes getting ready for the week, but you prioritize this. You prioritize yourselves, and that takes commitment. So thank you for being here, for being vulnerable, and just continuing on this incredibly courageous journey of recovery that we're all walking together tonight. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a step that, well, let's be honest, it often feels like jumping into the deep end of the pool, maybe even the really deep end, But I promise you, it's also where some of the most profound, life-changing healing truly begins. It's where the light starts to get into those hidden corners. We're talking about step 4, the step that reads, "We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves." Yeah. Just hearing that phrase, I know it can stir up a lot of emotions, maybe some anxiety fluttering in your chest, maybe even a little bit of dread, thinking, oh goodness, what am I going to have to look at? And listen, that is perfectly normal. Okay. It is absolutely okay to feel that way. This isn't just, another item to tick off on some recovery checklist. This step, ladies, is a foundational cornerstone of your recovery. It's like pouring the concrete slab before you build the house. Everything else rests on it. So my mission tonight, my hope for our time together, is to walk through this with you, to demystify it a bit, take away some of the scariness maybe, and to equip you with clarity, with courage, because you will need courage, but God provides it, and with some really practical tools. I want you to feel like you can move through this transformative process, feeling supported, feeling prepared, and knowing you're absolutely not alone. This step takes courage, and I want to walk through it with you every step of the way. So let's begin by truly understanding what step 4 means. The statement itself sounds so simple, right? We made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Just 10 words, but wow, there's a lot packed in there. What does searching really mean in this context? And what about fearless? Gosh, that word alone can feel impossible sometimes. And why is this step, out of all 12, so often called foundational? It's a word we use a lot in Celebrate Recovery, and there's a very good reason for it. The guide, our source material, it's so clear about this, and it's a truth we really need to grasp, like deep down in our bones. The moral inventory, it's defined as a process. Okay, first thing, it's a process, not a one-time event. It's a process where you, as a participant, thoroughly, and I mean thoroughly and meticulously examine your past, like with a magnifying glass almost. We're talking about looking honestly at past hurts, those wounds that maybe you've tried to ignore or minimize. We're looking at past behaviors, the things we did, the patterns we fell into. And this is so important. We're looking at the belief systems that have formed inside us as a result of those experiences. Think of it less like, a casual stroll down a memory lane, maybe whistling a tune. It's more like an archaeological dig. Yeah, that's a good picture. You're digging into the layers of your own history. You're excavating carefully, prayerfully, sifting through the emotional and spiritual sediment that is built up over time. Maybe stuff you didn't even realize was there. And as you embark on this careful, meticulous process, certain things are going to start bubbling up to the surface. Patterns of behavior, maybe. Things you do automatically, reactions you have that you don't even understand why. Patterns that might have been hidden, maybe even hidden from yourself for years, decades even. You'll start to identify character defects, those ingrained ways of thinking or acting that honestly trip us up, cause problems in our lives and relationships. Things that have become almost like our default settings, Like, oh, there I go again. And perhaps, most importantly, perhaps the most freeing part eventually, is that you will uncover unresolved pain. Pain that has been quietly, sometimes subtly, sometimes really loudly, influencing your thoughts, your feelings, your relationships, the choices you make every single day. Pain that might be driving behaviors you don't even like. So why foundational? Why that word? Well, because without this deep, honest examination, without this clear understanding of what actually happened back there, how it truly affected you, not how you wish it affected you or how you pretend it affected you, but how it really did and how you responded, how you coped, what choices you made, without that, you simply cannot effectively move on to step 5. And step 5, as you know, is when we share that inventory. We share it with God, with ourselves, and with another trusted human being, usually our sponsor, or maybe an accountability partner, pastor, someone safe. But you see, you need to know what you're sharing first, right? And more than just knowing it intellectually, you need to have actually processed it, wrestled with it, prayed through it to the very best of your ability before you can honestly, vulnerably articulate it to another person. It's like laying that solid concrete foundation we talked about. You have to get that right before you start putting up the walls and the roof of the house, which are the later steps. Everything that follows in your journey of healing, of transformation, it builds directly on the honesty and the thoroughness of this fourth step. That's why it's foundational. It holds everything else up. And that naturally leads us to, okay, where does this fit in practically? In our Celebrate Recovery program, in our weekly rhythm, in our books, it's not just this, big abstract idea of looking at your past. It's a very tangible, hands-on piece of work you'll be doing. And this is where the guide clarifies exactly how this intense, sometimes really difficult personal work fits into our overall step study journey together. Step 4, the work of the moral inventory, it's typically completed while we're working through Participants Guide 2, the second book in our series. Specifically, it spans across lessons 9, 10, and 11. Lesson 9 is kind of the introduction, setting the stage, explaining the why and the what. And then lessons 10 and 11 are where we really dive deep into the related spiritual inventory questions, which fuel the moral inventory work. Now, here's a really crucial point, ladies, and please hear this clearly because it sometimes causes confusion. The actual inventory sheets, those papers with the 5 columns that we'll talk about in detail soon, you fill those out outside of our group time. Okay, this isn't homework we do together in this room on Sunday nights. This is deep, personal, often very private work. It requires quiet. It requires focused attention. It often requires you to be alone with your thoughts, your memories, and with God. Or maybe, doing some of the writing with the prayerful support of your sponsor nearby if that feels right. But the bulk of the writing happens on your own time between our Sunday night sessions. It's your personal excavation project. The overarching goal, the intentional design of the whole program, is for you to have your moral inventory completely finished, or as finished as possible for this season, by the time we wrap up book 2. And this timing is really deliberate. It's not arbitrary. It's designed to perfectly set you up to prepare your heart and mind to begin step 5 right at the very beginning of book 3. See how it flows. Inventory in book 2, sharing in book 3. It's designed to be a seamless progression, one step building logically and emotionally upon the other, creating this momentum in your recovery. And they are very intentional in the materials, and I want to be intentional tonight about emphasizing this. It's a process, not a race. Come on, I'll just take a breath on that one. Process, not a race. I know. We live in a world that just screams for instant gratification, right? Quick fixes, overnight results, tick the box, move on. But this is different. This is heart work. This is soul work. And that kind of work is organic. It's personal. It unfolds. It can't be rushed if you want it to be truly transformative. The guide actually suggests that it typically takes a minimum of 2 months to complete properly. 2 months, that might sound like a long time, but think about the years, maybe decades of experiences you're unpacking. 2 months is actually, well, it's an investment. It's a significant commitment of your time, yes, but also your emotional energy, your spiritual energy. But it's intentional. There's a profound reason for this pacing, which we'll talk more about in a minute. Trying to rush through this step, trying to just get it done would actually undermine its entire purpose. It would be like trying to speed read your own soul, and you'd miss the most important parts, preventing the deep, lasting healing that we are all truly longing for. So, permission to take your time. Permission to trust the process. Okay, now let's tackle something that often comes up, especially for those new to Celebrate Recovery, but honestly, even for some who've been around a while. It's the difference between the moral inventory and the spiritual inventory. They sound similar, right? And they are related, definitely. But understanding the distinction is actually incredibly helpful. It helps you stay organized, stay clear, and know what you're supposed to be doing where, and importantly, what gets shared where. Our guide gives us a really clear breakdown, and it's worth spending a minute here just to make sure we're all on the same page. Understanding these differences helps you approach the work effectively and maybe with a little less confusion. Let's lay it out side by side. First, we have the moral inventory. This is the big one for step 4. This is the primary tool. This is the work done on those dedicated, specific inventory sheets. We have copies for you, or you can print them. They're the ones with the 5 distinct columns that we are going to dissect together in just a bit. Now, this is crucial, ladies, really crucial. Your moral inventory is a deeply personal document. It contains potentially sensitive, private details about your life, your hurts, your feelings, your part. Therefore, you are not going to share this document, these specific sheets, in our large group setting tonight or in your small group breakouts later, ever. It's also not something you just hand out to anyone. It is shared privately, typically one-on-one, with that single trusted person you choose for step 5, your sponsor, or that designated accountability partner, only when you get to step 5. This in-depth work, Filling out these moral inventory sheets happens primarily during Step Study Guide 2 across lessons 9, 10, and 11. Its main focus, its purpose, is listing very specific things, people who hurt you or institutions, specific events or actions that caused harm, the feelings associated with those events, the damage that resulted in your life, what was broken, and importantly, your personal responsibility in those situations, your part. It's the detailed, granular, sometimes painful work of mapping out your past experiences and their impact. Then second, we have the spiritual inventory. This is a little different. This work is done directly within your main participant's guidebook. You'll see sections in lessons 10 and 11 with questions to answer right there in the book. And here's the key difference in sharing. Unlike the private moral inventory, the spiritual inventory is designed to be shared and discussed more openly, specifically within your small group discussions. We will talk about the questions and your general insights from the spiritual inventory together in our small groups. The focus of the spiritual inventory is more on self-reflection, guided by specific questions. These questions are designed to help you uncover deeper truths about yourself, about your relationship with God, about your patterns. They prompt reflection that often, and the connection often contributes directly to the entries you'll eventually make on your private moral inventory sheets. So think about how they work together. It's quite brilliant, really. The spiritual inventory questions and our discussions about them in small group, they act like a warm-up, maybe, or a catalyst, or even like a direct feeder pipeline into the more detailed, personal, and private moral inventory work. Imagine you're discussing a spiritual inventory question in your small group about, say, trust. And as you're sharing or listening, suddenly a light bulb goes off. You think, oh my goodness, that event, that betrayal from years ago, that's why I struggle so much with trusting people now. That's the root. That realization, that aha moment, that connection you just made, that's gold. You would then take that specific insight and go to your private moral inventory sheets later, and you'd meticulously record that person, that event, the feeling, betrayed, fearful, the damage, broken trust, inability to be vulnerable, and maybe your part, perhaps pushing people away ever since. See the interplay. They are distinct tools, different formats, different purposes, different levels of privacy, but they work beautifully in tandem. The spiritual inventory helps uncover the themes and prompts the memories, and the moral inventory provides the structured place to record the specific details for your Step 5 sharing, two complementary parts of a profound discovery process. Does that distinction make a bit more sense? Okay, good. All right, now let's talk about the practicalities, the timeline, the pacing. We've established this isn't a quick fix, right? It's a deliberate, often slow process. So for you, sitting here tonight, maybe feeling a little apprehensive about starting, or maybe you've started and feel stuck, what does the timeline actually look like? And how should you approach the pacing of this significant piece of work? Remember, it's not about how fast you can get it done. It's about how thoroughly and honestly you allow yourself to engage with it. The guidance here in our materials is actually quite specific, and I find it incredibly helpful for managing expectations, both yours and mine as a leader, and for managing potential stress levels. You are encouraged first to really engage with Lesson 9. That's your introduction to the inventory concept. Read it carefully, pray over it, ask questions. Then the program intentionally sets aside significant, unhurried time for lessons 10 and 11. These are the lessons that contain the spiritual inventory questions we just talked about, the ones that fuel your moral inventory work. For those of us who facilitate these groups, like me, the direct guidance is to plan to spend at least one full month on Lesson 10 and at least one full month on Lesson 11, sometimes longer. So right there, that's your minimum of 2 months dedicated primarily to this inventory work. And ladies, this isn't just some arbitrary timeline pulled out of thin air. This 2-month minimum approach, it's designed with your well-being, your emotional and spiritual health right at the forefront. Why? Well, first, it ensures that you have ample, unpressured time for deep reflection. You can't just summon deep insights on demand, right? Sometimes you need to sit with things, let them percolate. This kind of work unearths a lot, memories, feelings, connections, and you need space, margin in your life to process what comes up without feeling frantic. Second, it allows you time to actually work through the emotions that will inevitably arise, and they will: sadness, anger, grief, fear, maybe confusion, maybe even unexpected relief or joy as you gain understanding. Giving it time means you're not just listing facts, you're allowing your heart to engage, to feel, and hopefully to begin healing those emotions. It helps avoid that feeling of being completely overwhelmed, like you're drowning in the past, by the sheer intensity and emotional weight of the process. Think of it like allowing time for the emotional dust to settle between discoveries so you can see clearly again. It's also really important to note, and the guide points this out, that some groups, maybe if we have a particularly large group one year, or maybe individual participants who are dealing with particularly deep, complex, or extensive trauma, You might genuinely require additional time, more than that 2-month minimum. And the guide emphasizes this. Literally in bold letters, it says, that's okay. Let me repeat that. That is okay. There is so much grace built into this process. We are not rigid here. We are here to support your unique healing journey, not to add more pressure or deadlines that make you feel like you're failing if you need more time. Your pace is your pace. The core instruction, however, the strong encouragement, remains consistent. Please, please aim to complete your moral inventory before we start Book 3. While the guide acknowledges it is technically possible to continue the step study into Book 3 without a fully completed inventory, it's very, very clear that doing so significantly limits the benefit of the later steps. So what does this all boil down to? What does this really mean for you sitting here tonight? It means that investing the time, the energy, the courage, the effort now, during these next couple of months, focusing on lessons 9, 10, and 11, doing that hard work now is genuinely going to supercharge the effectiveness of everything that comes after. Steps 5 through 12 all build in different ways on the foundation you lay right here in step 4. If you try to skim over it or rush through it or push through without doing the honest, searching, and fearless work required, well, the later steps, which depend on this foundation of self-awareness, truth, and taking responsibility, they just won't yield the same deep, lasting, transformative results. It really is like trying to build a beautiful, strong house, but you rushed the foundation, maybe used cheap concrete or didn't let it cure. The rest of the structure, no matter how well built, will never be as stable, as secure, or as lasting as it could be. So taking the necessary time now, being patient with yourself now, doing the courageous work now to build that solid foundation, I promise you, it will undeniably yield much greater, much more lasting rewards later on. It's a powerful incentive, isn't it? To truly lean into this foundational phase of your recovery, even when it feels hard. All right, ladies, deep breath. Let's get down to the nitty-gritty. The practical tool you'll actually be using. The moral inventory sheets with their 5 columns. This is where the rubber meets the road, isn't it? This is where all that thinking and praying and remembering starts to become concrete entries on paper. We're going to do a practical walkthrough now. We're going to demystify this process by breaking it down column by column so you know exactly how to approach it, what goes where, and why. This structure, these 5 columns, it truly helps organize what can often feel like a chaotic, overwhelming jumble of thoughts, memories, and emotions from the past. So you'll get your inventory sheets or print them out, and you'll clearly see 5 distinct columns running down the page. Let's go through each one carefully. I'll give you the definition, some examples, and point out some important nuances to keep in mind. Okay, column 1. The person or institution. This first column is where you identify who or what caused you harm, resentment, or fear. The scope here is actually quite broad, so don't limit yourself unnecessarily. It could certainly be a specific person in your life, a parent, a teacher, a sibling, a spouse, a friend, a boss, a coach, an ex-partner. You know, individuals who directly impacted you. But it's not limited just to people. It could also be an institution. Think about that. Maybe it was a church you attended that caused spiritual harm, or maybe legalistic wounds. Maybe it was a school where you experienced bullying, neglect, or felt unseen. Perhaps a sports team environment that was toxic, or a workplace where you faced discrimination, harassment, or abuse, an organization that failed you. And importantly, it can even extend beyond people and institutions. It could be a place that holds incredibly painful memories, or it could be a deeply impactful, ongoing issue or circumstance in your life. For example, maybe you list chronic illness if you've battled that since childhood and it caused fear or resentment. Or maybe my parents' divorce was a hugely impactful event. Or perhaps a significant cultural or societal issue like poverty or racism that directly impacted you and caused harm or fear. So think broadly here. Who or what is connected to the hurt? Now, here is a crucial tip for this column, and one we really want to emphasize because it makes the rest of the inventory so much more effective for genuine healing. Please encourage specificity. Be specific. Instead of just writing a general label, like, for example, dad alcoholic. Okay, that describes a condition, but it doesn't pinpoint the harm. The guide suggests you get much more granular, much more specific about the behavior or the impact. So instead of dad alcoholic, you might write, Dad made degrading comments about my intelligence every time I brought home a report card. Or, Dad frequently broke promises to pick me up from school, leaving me waiting alone and scared. Or, my mother critical. Maybe instead write, Mom constantly compared me unfavorably to my sister. See the difference. The more specific you are in column 1 about the source of the harm, the clearer the picture becomes as you move across the other columns. It helps you pinpoint the exact interaction, the exact dynamic, the exact failure. This isn't about writing vague generalities. It's about identifying the specific points of impact because specific wounds require specific attention for healing. Clarity begins here. Okay, moving across the page to column 2. The cause or event. Once you've identified the person or institution in column 1, this column is where you specify what exactly happened. What was the particular action? What was the specific event? Or maybe it was a repeated pattern of behavior that caused you that harm, that resentment, or that fear. Again, the warning here, just like in column 1, is to avoid vague entries. We need clear, distinct events or specific recurring behaviors. It's the what. So building on our previous examples, if column 1 was dad made degrading comments, column 2 might be when I showed him my B in math, he said I clearly didn't inherit his brains. Or if column 1 was dad frequently broke promises, column 2 could be the specific time he promised to take me to the father-daughter dance and then didn't show up because he was drinking. Or if column 1 was mom constantly compared me, column 2 might be every time my sister achieved something, mom would ask me why I couldn't be more like her. See how specific that is. It immediately shifts from a general situation or a personality trait, he drank, she was critical, to a concrete, impactful, and often deeply painful event or specific interaction that you can now process directly. It's about capturing those moments or those distinct patterns of moments, not just describing ongoing conditions in general terms. This is the what that triggered the effect you're going to write about next in column 3. Be specific. What did they do or say? What happened? Good. Now we come to column 3, the effect. This column asks you to delve deeper. Okay, that person did that thing, columns 1 and 2. Now, how did that specific cause or event make you feel? And, crucially, what beliefs about yourself, about others, about God, or about the world resulted from it? This is where you list your feelings. Be honest here. Were you rejected, ashamed, fearful, angry, unheard, abandoned, unloved, helpless, betrayed, worthless, confused? Name the feeling or feelings. Often there are layers, but it goes deeper than just that immediate emotional reaction. This column is also where you start to identify the belief systems, those core messages about yourself and the world that might have formed in response to that event or that pattern of events. These are often lies that we internalized. For example, if you were constantly criticized, columns 1 and 2, maybe you felt inadequate or stupid, column 3 feeling, and the resulting belief you write here might be I'm not good enough, or I'll never measure up, or there's something fundamentally wrong with me. If your trust was broken, maybe you felt betrayed and fearful, column 3 feelings, and the belief is I can't trust anyone, or men will always leave me, or people only look out for themselves. This column, it really raises an important question for each of us, doesn't it? How did this event, this hurt, and the feelings it generated, how did it shape your core understanding of who you are, of who other people are, of who God is? What lies did you start to believe about yourself or about life because of what happened? This is also where you acknowledge feelings of shame or guilt that might have arisen, maybe guilt you carried that wasn't even yours to carry. For example, if you were blamed for something that wasn't your fault, you might have felt deep shame, and you name that here. It's about recognizing the internal landscape, the feelings and beliefs that was created or significantly altered by these external experiences. What did it do to you on the inside? All right, column 4. After exploring the internal effects in column 3, we examine column 4, the damage. This asks a crucial question. What was broken? What part of your life, your well-being, your relationships, or your character was damaged as a result of that specific event, column 2, and its emotional and belief system effects, column 3. This is where you identify the tangible and intangible losses. Think about it. Was it trust that was broken? Maybe trust in a specific person, or maybe it eroded your ability to trust anyone, or even trust yourself or trust God. Was it intimacy? Did it make it hard for you to connect deeply, vulnerably, authentically with people later in life? Were specific relationships damaged, perhaps beyond repair? Or were they fundamentally altered in a way that continues to cause you pain or dysfunction? Did the event impact your sense of security? Maybe your emotional security, leaving you constantly anxious. Or your financial security, or even your physical security, leaving you feeling unsafe in the world or in your own body. And perhaps most profoundly, did it cause damage to your character or your sense of self? This could manifest as cripplingly low self-esteem, or a pervasive sense of unworthiness that haunts your decisions. Maybe a loss of your true identity, feeling like you don't even know who you really are underneath all the coping mechanisms. Or maybe a persistent feeling that you are just fundamentally flawed, not enough, or unlovable. Let's try to illustrate. If the event back in column 2 is a parent constantly yelling and demeaning you for years, the effect in column 3 might be feelings of fear, worthlessness, and the belief I'm stupid. Then the damage here in column 4 might include things like a persistent fear of authority figures that impacts your career, a deep-seated feeling of inadequacy that prevents you from pursuing your dreams or taking healthy risks, damaged self-worth that leads you into unhealthy relationships where you accept poor treatment because you don't believe you deserve better. Maybe damage to your ability to receive love or affirmation. It's about recognizing the profound long-term ripple effect of those past wounds. How they don't just sting in the moment, but can actually erode foundational aspects of your life, your relationships, your potential, your peace over time. Think of it as the pervasive chronic condition, the ongoing consequence that resulted from the initial wound. What was broken? What was lost? Okay, deep breath again, ladies. We've arrived at column 5, my part. This is often the most challenging column. It can feel the most confronting, but I promise you, ultimately, this is the most liberating column, because this is where you gain your power back. Here, you look honestly at what your role was, if any, in the situation or in its aftermath. Now, please hear me very, very carefully on this. This column is absolutely not about blaming yourself for things that were done to you. It is not about taking responsibility for someone else's abuse or neglect or bad behavior. It is about acknowledging your own responses, your own choices, your own attitudes, your own behaviors, especially those that develop as a result of the initial hurt. So what might go in this column? It could include character defects that developed or were strengthened in response to the trauma. Maybe things like people-pleasing, control, manipulation, dishonesty, judgmentalism, perfectionism, chronic anger, withdrawal. It could include attitudes or behaviors you adopted to cope or protect yourself, even if they became unhealthy, like maybe sarcasm became your shield, or maybe you learned to shut down emotionally. It might include addictions or compulsions that became unhealthy coping mechanisms to numb the pain or fill the void. Or it could be specific choices you made as a result of the initial event and its effects. Column 3. For instance, maybe because you felt rejected, column 3, your part, column 5, was choosing to isolate yourself, or choosing unhealthy relationships to try and get validation, or choosing to gossip about the person who hurt you. Now, it is critically, vitally important to clarify here, and the guide is very, very explicit about this. You, as a participant, are never responsible for abuse inflicted on you. Especially if you were a child. Let me say that again. You are never to blame for someone else's sin against you, whether that was physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, spiritual abuse, neglect. None of it is your fault. You are not responsible for their choices, their brokenness, their actions, period. However, and this is the crucial distinction, you may still identify how those events, those deep wounds from the past, shaped your later responses, your reactions, your patterns of behavior, your own character defects. This column isn't about assigning blame for the original wound. It's about taking responsibility for your own side of the street, for the choices you made after the initial harm occurred, or the ways you allowed that harm to subtly or overtly warp your own character or behavior over time. Let's go back to the example. A parent's constant criticism, column 2, made you feel unworthy, column 3, and damaged your self-esteem, column 4. In column 5, my part, you are not responsible for the criticism, but you might identify that your part was developing a character defect of people-pleasing to try and avoid criticism, or maybe developing chronic self-doubt that held you back, or maybe responding with bitterness or resentment that poisoned other relationships. Or perhaps you chose unhealthy ways to seek approval elsewhere. That's your part, your response. It's a very nuanced distinction, isn't it? Blame versus responsibility for our own stuff. But understanding and applying this correctly brings incredible freedom because it empowers you. It empowers you to change your own patterns, your own responses, your own choices moving forward. You're no longer just a victim of the past, forever defined by what happened to you. You become an agent of your own healing, taking ownership of the things you can change, which are your own attitudes, behaviors, and choices today. That's where the power lies. That's where the transformation happens. Wow, that distinction in my part is just, it's so incredibly important. I really believe it's the key that unlocks the door to true freedom from the chains of the past. It's not about re-victimizing ourselves, not at all. It's about empowering us, enabling us to take ownership of our own journey, our own healing, our own choices from this day forward. Reclaiming our God-given power to choose how we respond, how we live, how we love, regardless of what happened back then. And as you can see now, hopefully, each of these columns, column 1, the person or institution, column 2, the cause or event, column 3, the effect, feelings and beliefs, column 4, the damage, and column 5, my part, my responsibility. They really do build on each other, don't they? You start with the source of the pain, you identify the specific impact, you explore the internal consequences, how it felt, what you believed, you understand what was broken or lost, and then, with courage and grace and honesty, you look at your own responses and choices in the midst of it all. It creates this comprehensive, sometimes startlingly clear, deeply honest picture of your past. Piece by painstaking piece. And it's in seeing that whole picture, maybe for the first time, that we are led towards true healing and genuine wholeness in Christ. It's powerful work, ladies. Really powerful. Now, okay, we need to just pause and acknowledge something very real, very honest. Because it's the truth. This process, it's hard. Can we just say that out loud? It is hard work. There's no sugarcoating it. I won't stand up here and pretend it's easy or quick or painless. It's often none of those things. Working through painful memories, confronting difficult truths about ourselves and others, facing resentments or fears we've buried for years, it can be emotionally exhausting. It can be draining. And sometimes, yes, it can feel completely overwhelming. It's absolutely normal, and I want to validate this right now, right here in this safe space. It is normal if you feel those emotions welling up as you do this work. You might feel overwhelmed at the sheer volume of it. You might feel stuck staring at a blank page, not knowing where to start or what to write. You might feel tempted to give up, to just shove it all back in the box and pretend you never opened it. Please hear me. Feeling this way is a common, understandable, and honestly an expected part of the inventory process for almost everyone. If you feel resistance or fear or exhaustion, it is not a sign that you're doing it wrong. It's actually a sign that you are doing deep, significant, important work. It means you're touching on things that really matter, things that need God's healing touch. And, as leaders who walk alongside women doing this year after year, we see very common stuck points, places where people tend to get bogged down. Maybe you'll recognize some of these. One is simply getting overwhelmed by the sheer weight of past trauma. Especially if there's a lot of it. It can feel like just too much to put down on paper, like opening a floodgate that you're terrified you won't be able to close. That's real. Another common step point is uncertainty. Just not knowing what to actually put in a particular column, or how to phrase it, or worrying if it's right. Is this the effect or the damage? Am I describing the cause correctly? That confusion can paralyze us. Sometimes it's shame, feeling too ashamed, too embarrassed, or too deeply fearful to write something down. Maybe it's a secret you've never told anyone. Maybe it's something you did that you deeply regret. The fear of what might be revealed, even just to yourself on that piece of paper, can be incredibly powerful. You might think subconsciously, maybe, if I write this down, it makes it real, and I don't want it to be real. And then there's good old perfectionism. Oh, perfectionism is such a sneaky obstacle in recovery, isn't it? That desire to do the inventory perfectly, wanting to get every single detail right, every word precise, every memory accounted for before you even begin. Or getting stuck on one entry, refusing to move on until it feels absolutely complete and perfectly articulated. Perfectionism will keep you stuck indefinitely if you let it. What's truly fascinating here, though, and I hope encouraging, is just how universal these emotional roadblocks are. If you hit one of these walls, overwhelm, uncertainty, shame, perfectionism, please know you are absolutely 100% not alone. Almost everyone experiences these to some degree. They are simply signposts indicating that you are engaging in deep, vital, and truly transformational work. They are invitations to lean into God's grace, not reasons to quit. So the big question then is, what do you do when you hit these walls? When you feel stuck or overwhelmed or afraid, do you just give up? No, absolutely not. The Guide and the Wisdom of Celebrate Recovery offer some really practical, really actionable tips to help you keep moving forward. Because remember, progress, not perfection, is the goal here. Just keeping the momentum going, even if it's slow. Okay, first practical tip. If you get stuck on one particular column for a specific entry, maybe you just can't figure out my part for that situation right now, or the damage feels too big to name. Don't stare at it forever. Don't agonize over it for hours. Seriously, just give yourself permission to leave it blank for the moment. Skip it. Move on to the next line or the next memory or something else you can write down more easily. Your brain, your heart, they need breaks sometimes, especially when dealing with tough stuff. You can always come back to that difficult entry later, maybe after you've talked it over with your sponsor, maybe after praying about it specifically, maybe just after a good night's sleep gives you fresh perspective. The important thing is to keep the pen moving, to keep the process flowing, even if it's imperfect. Don't let one hard spot derail the whole train. Secondly, this is a big one, ladies, and it really challenges our typical way of thinking, especially when facing something scary. The advice is, don't wait to feel ready. How often do we do that in life? I'll do it when I feel brave enough. I'll start when I feel motivated. I'll tackle that hard conversation when I feel ready. We think we need to feel courageous or perfectly prepared or completely healed before we can take the step. But the Guide, and honestly the testimony of countless people in recovery, reminds us that healing, growth, breakthrough, it actually comes through obedience and willingness, not necessarily through specific feeling, just the simple act of showing up, of picking up that pen even when your hand is shaking, of being willing to put one word down on that paper, even when you feel completely unready, completely inadequate, or frankly, terrified. That simple act of willingness, that's faith in action. And that act opens the door for God's grace, His strength, His wisdom to meet you right there in your vulnerability. Don't wait for the feeling of readiness. Choose the action of willingness. God honors willingness. Third practical tip, break it down. Please, please break it down into small, manageable sessions. You do not need, I repeat, do not need to block out an entire Saturday, 8 hours straight, and try to write your entire life story inventory in one go. Please don't do that to yourself. In fact, that approach is often completely counterproductive. It almost guarantees burnout, emotional exhaustion, and feeling utterly overwhelmed and discouraged. Instead, think small. Think consistent. Short, regular writing times are often far more effective and sustainable. Maybe commit to just 15 or 20 minutes 3 times a week. Maybe even just 10 minutes every single day. Find a rhythm that works for you. Consistency over intensity is absolutely key here. Little by little, step by step, page by page, that's how this gets done. And finally, a very practical tip about the writing itself. Use simple bullet points. You do not need to write long, detailed narrative journal entries for each item. This isn't about crafting beautiful prose. It's not about writing a novel about your past. It's simply about getting the key information down clearly and concisely onto the inventory sheets. Don't worry about perfect sentences or eloquent descriptions or detailed backstories for every entry. Just get the core facts, the core feelings, the core beliefs, the core damage, the core part. Get those key insights onto the paper using bullet points or short phrases. The goal is clarity and progress, not creating a literary masterpiece. Keep it simple. And just to wrap all of that practical advice together, ladies, the overarching principle, the banner flying over this entire 4-step process is always, always, always grace over perfection. Can you say that with me? Grace over perfection. This is not an academic exercise. You are not being graded. There is no pass or fail here. This is about your healing journey with Jesus. And he's full of grace. So please extend that same grace to yourself. The emphasis is entirely on progress, however small, not on absolute completion or flawless execution. Every single bullet point you manage to write, every difficult truth you acknowledge on that paper, every moment you choose willingness over fear, every time you pick up the pen again after wanting to quit, that is a significant step forward. That is a victory. Celebrate those small victories along the way. Be kind to yourself in this process. Okay. Given everything we've just talked about, the depth, the potential difficulty, the emotional weight, it's probably pretty obvious, but we absolutely have to highlight the critical, non-negotiable necessity of self-care and maintaining balance throughout this season of inventory work. You are doing profound emotional and spiritual work, ladies. It's like deep sea diving for your soul. And it will draw significantly on your reserves, your emotional energy, your mental energy, your spiritual energy. Think of it like running a spiritual marathon. You wouldn't run a marathon without training, hydrating, refueling, and resting, right? Same principle applies here. You need to intentionally care for your whole being. Thankfully, the guide offers some really concrete, really practical strategies for maintaining both your emotional and your spiritual balance during this intense time. Let's look at emotional balance first. It is crucial, not optional, crucial to proactively schedule uplifting and restorative activities between your writing sessions. Don't just do the hard work. Intentionally build in recovery time for your heart and mind. This means deliberately carving out time for hobbies that genuinely bring you joy, things that make you feel alive and relaxed. It means spending quality time with safe, supportive loved ones who pour into you, not drain you. Maybe getting outside in nature, walk in the park, sit by the water. Listening to uplifting music that feeds your soul. Whatever it is that genuinely replenishes your spirit and your energy, schedule it in. Make it non-negotiable. And crucially, as part of your emotional balance, please continue attending your Celebrate Recovery open share groups every single week. Don't isolate yourself when you're doing this deep work. That peer support, hearing others share their struggles and victories, that shared experience, that tangible sense of, I'm not alone in this, it is a vital lifeline during the inventory process. And maintain regular intentional contact with your accountability partners and your sponsor. They are your pit crew in this marathon. They are there to listen without judgment, to encourage you when you feel like quitting, to pray with you, and to gently remind you of your progress. And, most importantly, of God's unwavering faithfulness. Don't try to do this in a vacuum. Lean on your support system. Now, for your spiritual balance, equally important. The emphasis here is on intentionally deepening your connection, your relationship with your higher power, Jesus Christ. He is the source of your strength, your hope, your healing. So this means consistently making time for prayer, talking to him, listening to him, pouring out your heart to him, asking for his help and guidance with the inventory. It means engaging in regular Bible reading, letting his truth wash over you and counteract the lies you might be uncovering from the past. And it means meditating on God's promises, actively focusing your mind on truths about his character. He's faithful, he's loving, he's forgiving. His love for you, it's unconditional. And his unwavering presence with you. He will never leave you or forsake you, especially not in this. These spiritual disciplines, they aren't just, nice religious activities to check off the list. They are essential. They provide perspective when you feel lost in the weeds of the past. They offer comfort when painful emotions surface. They infuse you with supernatural strength when you feel weak. And they anchor you in unchanging truth when your feelings might feel like they're a stormy sea pulling you in 1,000 different directions. Stay anchored to Him. And now here's a really interesting point related to balance, and it often surprises people when they first hear it, but it is so profoundly important for maintaining perspective and hope during this potentially heavy work. The role of including positives in your inventory. Yes, you heard that right. Positives. While the main focus of step 4 is understandably on listing the resentments, the fears, the harms, the negative experiences, and their effects, the guide actually suggests, and we strongly encourage, that you can also intentionally include positive inventory entries alongside the negative ones. Think about it for a moment. Our lives, even the most difficult lives, are not solely made up of pain and darkness, are they? They are also filled, often unexpectedly, with moments of grace, moments of connection, evidence of love, seeds of growth. So as you write about the hard things, consider also writing down uplifting relationships you've experienced. Maybe a grandparent who loved you unconditionally, a teacher who believed in you, a friend who stood by you. Include specific acts of kindness you've received that touched your heart. Remember moments of genuine joy or profound peace you've experienced. Think about supportive people, mentors, pastors, coaches who positively impacted your life and helped shape who you are today in good ways. It could even be moments of unexpected grace, answered prayers, times when you clearly saw God show up for you, maybe even in the midst of a hard season. Now, some people like to aim for like a 1.1 ratio for every negative entry, find a positive one. And if that helps you, great. But please note, the number isn't the goal. This isn't some kind of cosmic balancing act or a math problem you're trying to solve. This raises an important question for us then. What is the deeper purpose of intentionally including these positives? It's profoundly simple, really. It's to maintain hope. It's to cultivate gratitude, even while looking at pain. And it's to keep perspective throughout what can be an incredibly intense and emotionally challenging process. Writing down the positives is a powerful reminder that even in the darkest chapters of your story, light still existed. That good things, good people, good experiences are absolutely part of your story too, not just the hurts. And it's a tangible way to acknowledge God's hand, His grace, His provision, His presence, which has been there all along, even in the hardest seasons, maybe in ways you didn't even recognize at the time. It prevents the inventory from becoming this solely overwhelming exercise in reliving pain, and instead frames it more accurately as a comprehensive look at your entire life, the shadows and the lights seen through the lens of honesty, and ultimately leading towards hope and healing. So don't forget the good stuff. It matters too. Okay, another really important area we need to address, and one that understandably generates a lot of questions and sometimes confusion, is the intersection of mental health and this inventory process. We need to be absolutely crystal clear about the role of Celebrate Recovery here because it's a vital distinction for everyone involved. It is essential to remember, ladies, always, that CR is a peer support ministry. We walk alongside each other, sharing our experience, strength, and hope based on the 12 steps and 8 principles. It is explicitly not a medical program or a professional therapy program. We, in this room, myself included, we are not licensed counselors, therapists, psychologists, or doctors. That's not our role. And that distinction is so vital, primarily for your safety and well-being. However, that being said, the guide makes it very clear, and our experience bears this out time and time again, that participants who struggle with mental health challenges, whether you have a formal diagnosis like anxiety, depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder, or whether you just suspect you might be struggling with something undiagnosed, you can still benefit deeply, profoundly from working the steps, including this 4th step inventory. Our program acknowledges, as we all should, that struggles like persistent anxiety, deep depression, the echoes of trauma, or other mental health concerns often have multiple components, sometimes spiritual, sometimes emotional, sometimes stemming from past experiences, and yes, sometimes biological or neurological as well. It can be complex. The inventory process itself, this honest looking back, can be incredibly helpful in uncovering and addressing those spiritual and emotional components that may be contributing to or exacerbating mental health struggles. Specifically, doing your inventory can help you identify potential root causes of recurring emotional patterns like, why do I always react with intense anger? Or why do I spiral into hopelessness so easily? It can help pinpoint specific events from your past that led to deeply ingrained, often negative belief systems about yourself or the world. I'm worthless. The world is unsafe. I'll always be alone. And it can help you connect the dots, maybe for the first time, between past trauma, big T or little t trauma, and your present day behaviors, coping mechanisms, or emotional states. Gaining that understanding, that insight, can be incredibly empowering, even alongside professional treatment. So, the really reassuring message here is this: working the inventory is essentially the same process for everyone, regardless of your mental health history. Participants with diagnosed mental health conditions, or those just wrestling with significant emotional distress, you follow the same inventory sheets, the same 5 columns, the same process as everyone else. The principles of honest self examination, identifying hurts, acknowledging feelings and beliefs, understanding damage, and taking responsibility for our part, these are universal principles for healing and growth that apply to all of us. If we connect this to the bigger picture, what does it mean? It means that while Celebrate Recovery is absolutely not a substitute for necessary professional mental health care like therapy or medication, if needed, it is a powerful tool that can beautifully complement that care. It addresses the spiritual and emotional dimensions of our struggles in a way that clinical settings might not always focus on. Working the steps, especially the inventory, can help individuals gain profound insight into the spiritual roots and emotional drivers behind their struggles. It can create an openness to healing, a willingness to face things, and a reliance on God that perhaps wasn't there before, which can actually make professional treatment even more effective. They can work hand in hand. Yes, exactly. It's not an either, it's often a both hand. It's not a replacement, but it can be a profound complement to professional care. And because of that, it also means we have to be very clear about our boundaries. While our Celebrate Recovery environment is designed to be incredibly supportive, loving, and nurturing, it is absolutely crucial that we all remember the limits of our roles as peer supporters. If you or someone you know in our group appears to need professional help, maybe you're concerned about severe depression, ongoing trauma symptoms, thoughts of self-harm, struggles with an eating disorder, or anything that seems beyond the scope of peer support, it is vital, ethically and lovingly, to refer them to qualified professionals. That might mean encouraging them to see their doctor, or connecting them with licensed counselors, psychologists, psychiatrists, or if your church's CR program has one, connecting them with a CR mental health champion, whose role is specifically to help people find appropriate professional resources in the community. We, as facilitators and participants, are here to encourage each other, to guide through the steps using the CR materials, to listen with compassion, and to share our own stories. But we do not diagnose, we do not provide clinical therapy, we do not give medical advice. Your safety and the appropriate care for your whole being, spirit, mind, and body are absolutely paramount. So please don't hesitate to seek professional help if you need it, and know that doing so is a sign of strength, not weakness, and it works beautifully alongside your recovery journey here. Okay, shifting gears slightly. A question that often comes up, maybe not for those of you going through this for the very first time, but certainly for women who have been in recovery for a while, maybe completed a step study once or even twice before, is this: what about working a second or third inventory? When I go through the steps again, do I have to start all over from scratch with a blank sheet of paper, or can I just build on what I already did? It's a really great question, and it acknowledges that recovery is ongoing, right? We continue to grow and change. And the guide provides a very clear and I think very empowering answer. Essentially, it says, you don't have to start over, but you can. Isn't that great? It gives you flexibility tailored to where you are in your ongoing journey with God. The guide basically outlines 2 main approaches, and both are equally valid. There's no single right way. It really depends on where you are in your journey, what feels right for you this time around, and maybe what God seems to be prompting you to do. The first option is exactly what the question asks about. You can start fresh. Some individuals, especially if they're embarking on a brand new steps study cycle from the very beginning, maybe they completed the program years ago and stepped away for a while, or maybe they just feel called to do a much deeper dive this time. They choose to actually, sometimes ceremonially, burn or shred or archive their past inventories. And then they begin entirely anew with blank pages. This can be a very powerful symbolic act. It can signify a truly fresh start, a willingness to dig even deeper into areas they might not have been ready or able to address honestly before. Or it might simply reflect a desire to process things with new eyes, with the new maturity, the new perspective, the new understanding that they've gained since their last inventory. It's like clearing the slate and saying, okay, God, show me what you want me to see now in this season. The second option, and this is one that many women find incredibly practical and also really powerful for tracking growth, is to add to your existing inventory. You don't discard the old one, you build upon it. With this approach, You would simply pull out your previous inventory sheets, prayerfully review them, and then systematically add to them based on your life and insights since then. So what would you add? Well, you definitely add recent events that have occurred, resentments or fears that have cropped up since your last step study. Life keeps happening, right? Recovery is ongoing, and unfortunately, so are new hurts or the emergence of old patterns and new situations. You would also add any new insights or maybe deeper understanding of belief systems or even different feelings that you've discovered about past events that are already on your inventory. Sometimes wisdom comes with time, doesn't it? Or with new experiences, or maybe through therapy, or just through continued healing and CR. And suddenly you look back at an old unit that's on your sheet and you see it in a completely new light. You understand the effect or the damage differently now. You add that new insight. And importantly, you can also use this method to note progress. You might add notes about amends you've made related to certain entries, steps 8 and 9, or maybe note new, healthy relationships you've formed that show healing in areas previously marked by damage, or areas of significant personal or spiritual growth you've experienced since that last inventory. It becomes this dynamic, living document charting not just the wounds, but also the healing and the ongoing journey of your recovery. A really helpful practical tip if you choose this add-on method is to use a different color pen for all your new entries. Or maybe create a separate section clearly marked additions year. This allows you to visually distinguish the original work from the new layers, and it can be incredibly encouraging to literally see your progression and growth over time on the page. Yeah, that different colored pen idea, it's simple but so brilliant, isn't it? It provides such a tangible way to track your progress and really acknowledge the journey you've been on since the last time. It powerfully underscores the continuous nature of recovery. It's not a one and done event where you cross some magical finish line and suddenly you're fixed and never have to look back again. No, it's a lifelong journey of growth, healing, and drawing closer to God. And every new step study cycle, whether you choose to start completely fresh or to add to your previous work, offers this incredible God-given opportunity for deeper insight into yourself, for new avenues of healing to open up, and for further growth in your relationship with yourself, with other people, and most importantly, with God Himself. It acknowledges that our understanding of ourselves, our past, and God's work in us evolves as we evolve, and that God is continually, faithfully doing a good work in us, just like Philippians promises. Okay, ladies, to bring this all kind of full circle tonight and hopefully provide you, my dear sisters, with even more reassurance as you approach or continue this fourth step, I want to share just a little insight into how the Celebrate Recovery program itself, the structure, the leadership guidelines, are intentionally designed to support you through this often intense and challenging step. We're going to pull back the curtain just a tiny bit and share some of the facilitator best practices that are outlined in the leader materials. Now, this isn't just inside baseball for leaders. I'm sharing this with you tonight to show you concretely that you are absolutely not alone in this, and that the entire process, the way we run these groups, is structured with your success, your safety, and your well-being squarely in mind. There's a safety net built in. The intentional design of our program support system, especially around the inventory, it's incredibly thoughtful. It's really woven with grace and a deep understanding of what this process entails. First off, there's wise scheduling. We touched on this earlier, but it bears repeating from the leader's perspective. As leaders, we are specifically instructed, guided, to allow at least 2 full months for lessons 10 and 11, that core inventory work time. Now, this isn't just some logistical note on our calendar. It's a profound act of grace, of understanding, built right into the program structure for your benefit. It means we, as your leaders, are expected to deliberately create the necessary breathing room, the margin for you to process, to feel, to write, and to heal without the added pressure of a rushed, frantic timeline. We know this takes time. The program knows it takes time. We might even, depending on the group's needs, consider adding an optional fellowship night midway through, or maybe a dedicated, quiet writing night here at the church, just to provide some extra encouragement, a space to answer questions that pop up, or offer some shared focus time for the deep work. What this communicates, hopefully, is that your well-being, your thoroughness, not just ticking a box or meeting a deadline, is truly paramount. Then there's the practice of using examples. We as facilitators are strongly encouraged to use whiteboards or maybe pre-prepared sample inventory sheets using hypothetical examples, of course, never real ones from group members, to actually walk through sample entries as a group during the teaching time. This is crucial because it helps visually demonstrate that column-to-column flow in a really concrete way. It shows you how you might move from identifying a person, column 1, to a specific event, column 2, then exploring the emotional effect and belief, column 3, identifying the resulting damage, column 4, and finally, considering your part, column 5. Seeing examples makes it less abstract, less intimidating. It ensures you'll get clear, tangible guidance on how to actually fill out those sheets, hopefully taking away some of the mystery and the, am I doing this right? Fear. We want you to feel confident and equipped for the process. We are also guided to intentionally leave room for discussion during these teaching sessions. The goal is to try and leave a good chunk of time, maybe 20 to 30 minutes, at the end of our teaching on inventory night specifically for open questions or for participants to share general insights or general struggles they might be having with the process. Again, not sharing specific content from their private inventory. This ensures you have a safe, dedicated space right here to ask what you need to ask, to clarify any confusion, to maybe hear how others are approaching it, and just to process things out loud a bit. It helps normalize the struggles, helps you realize you're not alone in your questions or difficulties, and reminds us that collectively we can learn and grow and support each other through this. There's also a really important principle called wise transparency. This guides us as facilitators when we share examples from our own lives, perhaps related to our own inventory work in the past. We are encouraged to share general examples, maybe about the types of things we uncovered or the process of working through it, but to do so without engaging in over-disclosure. That means we don't share every explicit, intimate detail of our own inventory or stories involving other specific people in this group setting. This is a very intentional practice. Why? To protect the dignity, the privacy, and the anonymity of everyone involved, including ourselves and the people in our stories. It also models healthy boundaries around sharing personal information. What this assures you as a participant is that this is a safe and respectful environment where your own deeply personal inventory, shared only with your sponsor, will be held in strict confidence and treated with honor. Safety is key. And finally, there's a really powerful best practice that guides how we approach your progress. It's about encouraging responsibility without policing. The guide emphasizes very strongly that your inventory progress, how much you write, how deep you go, when you finish, is truly between you, God, and your sponsor or accountability partner. We, as facilitators, are specifically advised to avoid enforcing deadlines harshly. We don't collect your sheets. We don't require public check-ins in the group about how many pages you've completed. Why? Because this reinforces your personal ownership of your recovery journey. It greatly reduces any unhelpful external pressure or feelings of shame if you're moving at a different pace. It allows you to work authentically, guided by the Holy Spirit and in honest conversation with your sponsor, trusting God's timing for your healing. This shows just how much thought has gone into creating an environment of grace, personal empowerment, and genuine trust in both you and God in this process. You can really see, can't you, how all these behind-the-scenes practices, these guidelines for us as leaders, they all come together. They're designed to create a nurturing, supportive, yet appropriately challenging environment. An environment designed specifically to help you succeed in this vital step. The ultimate goal, from our perspective as leaders, and indeed for the entire Celebrate Recovery program, isn't just to get you through the material, it's to equip you, the participant, to take full, empowered ownership of your own recovery journey, knowing deep in your bones that you are supported, you are loved, and you are cheered on every single step of the way. We are for you in this. So, as we bring our time together tonight to a close, let's just circle back one last time, back to the core purpose, the heart, and the powerful promise of this fourth step, this moral inventory. Please hear this one thing if you hear nothing else tonight. It is not ultimately about dredging up the past just to wallow in it or relive the pain endlessly. I know it can feel like that sometimes when you're in the thick of it, but I want you to hold on to this truth. The purpose is not reliving. It is profoundly about releasing. Releasing the pain, releasing the bitterness, releasing the shame. Releasing the shame. This courageous process, this willingness to look honestly, it brings freedom. It brings incredible insight into your own story, why you are the way you are. And it opens the door to a deeper, more authentic, more intimate connection with God's truth. His truth about your past, his truth about your present, and his truth about who he created you to be. It's truly about letting his light shine into those dark, hidden, wounded places so that the darkness can finally recede. That's the goal. Freedom. Release. Light. The guide offers some incredibly powerful reminders, almost like little nuggets of truth to hold on to, especially when this feels hard. And I want to leave these with you tonight as encouragement. First, please remember, God already knows your past. He knows every single detail, every hurt you suffered, every mistake you made, every hidden fear you carry, every secret shame. He knows it all. This inventory isn't about informing him of anything new he doesn't already know. It's about you becoming willing to bring it out into the light with him. It's about letting him meet you in that vulnerable place right in the middle of the mess so he can truly heal it within you. He knows it all, ladies. And he loves you anyway, unconditionally, right now, as you are. Second reminder, we've said it before, we'll say it again. The goal is always progress, not perfection. Please be kind to yourself. Every word you manage to write, every tear you shed, every moment of honest reflection you achieve, every tiny step forward you take on those inventory sheets, no matter how small or how messy it feels, that is a victory. Acknowledge it. Celebrate it. Don't let the enemy of perfection rob you of the joy of your progress. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And finally, please, please internalize this. There is absolutely no shame in taking your time with this step. There is no shame in needing more than 2 months. There's no shame in asking for help when you feel stuck from your sponsor, from your accountability partners, from God. There is no shame in struggling through the process and finding it hard and having days you want to quit. That is part of the journey. It is normal, it is expected, it means you are human, and you are doing something incredibly brave. Embrace the struggle as part of your unique path to freedom. Don't add shame to the process. We are here to walk with you through it, struggles and all. I want to leave you tonight with this incredibly encouraging scripture. It's one of my favorites, and it feels so perfect for this stage of the journey. It's from Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. Paul writes, "Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." Isn't that beautiful? He began a good work in you when you started this journey, when you walked through those doors. And he, not you in your own strength, but he will carry it on. He will see it through. He will bring it to completion. That promise is for you. Right here, right now, in the middle of step 4, hold on to that confidence. So here's my challenge, my closing thought for you to take with you as you leave tonight, as you approach or continue your own inventory work this week. Consider this as you write, as you reflect, as you remember. Consider not just what you write down in those 5 columns, but consider whose truth you are allowing to redefine your story as you do it. Will you continue to let the old tapes play? Will you let the shame from the past, or the lies you believed, or the harsh words of others dictate your identity and your future? Or will you intentionally, courageously allow God's healing his truth about his love for you, his forgiveness, his power, his purpose for your life? Will you allow his truth to illuminate the path forward and redefine your story from this point on? How might embracing this discomfort now, this honest digging, this sometimes painful looking back, how might choosing to do that hard work now, leaning into God's grace, how might that open the door to an unparalleled freedom, a lightness, a wholeness that maybe, just maybe, you haven't even dared to imagine was possible for someone like you? Be honest, ladies. Be fearless, not in your own strength, but in his. Take the step. Do the work. God will meet you there. I promise you he will. Thank you so much for being here tonight, for your courage, for your willingness. I'm praying for each and every one of you as you undertake this sacred, holy work of the 4th step. God bless you. Go in his peace and his strength this week.